Confessions of an Accountant, where no topic is off the ledger.
Why is that? Let's have a little bit of a reality check now. The world's moved on. Client expectations have moved on. Recently, I was speaking at an event and we were having a big debate, like probably most of us to have on this call for the last 2 to 3 years around AI. Like, how is AI going to impact our profession? And one of the things that, again, that really stood out to me that I was trying to hammer home is we as a profession were so internal looking. We were thinking, okay, well, how is it going to help us be more efficient? How is it going to add to our bottom line? How is it going to change tax filing, for example, in the future? What are the government's expectations going to be of us? The one thing I was trying to really hit home is actually it's clients' expectations that have moved on. And that's something that we are quite bad at as a profession, is putting that at the forefront of everything that we do. Obviously, if we're not matching our clients' expectations, we're not going to have a business to be running in the first place. I've mentioned AI and technology. It's sprinted ahead. I use this analogy when I first moved over, I think it must have been 2013, moved over to New Zealand, who happened to be a lot more ahead of the curve when it comes to utilizing things like open banking. Obviously, Zero was born out of New Zealand, automation, machine learning, all of those kinds of things. I mean, there's lots of things that they're very much behind on compared to the UK, but technology adoption, they were the majority of the profession were far more advanced. But I remember at the time kind of talking about cloud technology and cloud software and the importance of it, and driving down the whole discussion around going paperless. And I just remember this one of the firms I've worked with, the fastest way, and I've done, I do, and I still do, and I did a lot of change management work with firms. The fastest way that they went paperless was not around planning. It was their printer broke and they didn't fix it. So, and it was the most successful transition as well that I'd seen in that time. So I think it's really important that we have this kind of constant growth mindset. We force change upon ourselves, upon our staff, and also upon our clients, where that client has that expectation that the change is going to happen as well. But when I have since come back to the UK in 2020, what I have really noticed is that most firms haven't actually changed their operating model. So despite the fact that, even in individualized in consumer lives, we're constantly looking at subscriptions, we're never locked into multi-year contracts, or very rarely anymore. Our expectations have changed around how we do business. Firms are still using their old operating model. It's barely shifted. So today, I just really want to lift the lid on what a modern scalable firms are actually doing. And also what I've seen from the inside of like Zero, Ignition, Iris, and now Mazuma, of course. I've already spoken about my background, but I think I should talk at this slide maybe around why it matters. Um, I think for me, because I've lived on both sides of the fence, inside practice, but also in some of the most fastest growing SaaS companies in the accounting and fintech world, the biggest thing that I've learned is that SaaS companies can scale in a way that accounting firms could, but they usually don't. Um, and what these tech companies do instinctively is all around subscription thinking. It's all around predictable revenue, clear customer journeys, deeply productized services, a ruthless focus on margin and investment as well. And a lot of the time, what we see is that these are things that our profession is actually still only dabbling in because it's not a priority, because we're still using those same operating models. So let's go into a few, and I think I kind of pulled out maybe two, three, I think it might have been four truths that I wanted to share with you in the next 10 minutes. And truth number one, SaaS thinking can be your secret weapon. For me, SaaS isn't software, it's a mindset. So when I'm working off of a SaaS operating model, which is what we do in Mazuma, and one of the reasons why I came back into practice, is there are kind of four key things that really makes it unique and makes you laser focused on that scalable growth. Scalable growth for me is also controlled growth. And the first thing that I'm going to call out here is predictability matters. So SaaS basically, it lives and dies by predictable recurring revenue. When I work with firms, most firms that I work with, they don't look at ARR, they don't look at ARPU, they don't look at CAC. They very rarely look at churn. If they look at churn, they look at it as a top line figure. but they need to be focusing on that. They need to be focusing on things like your lifetime values, and I'll go into some of the measuring what matters a bit later on. Another thing that is really kind of a way of thinking is productization creates scale. So SaaS companies, they don't reinvent the wheel for every customer. They build one wheel and they roll it many, many times. And again, that's a massive downfall where I've seen in more traditional operating model accountancy firms where one, you lose the efficiency because you haven't productized your services correctly. But secondly, as well, what you are doing is you're actually becoming non-specialist in areas where you could really monetize a specialist approach or service. Of course, clarity creates margin. So you look at the fastest growing companies, they define exactly what they do, they define exactly who they serve, and exactly how customers move through their system or their customer journey. And finally, if everything is bespoke, nothing scales, right? So I've seen firms with 40, 50 different service combinations, and it's the same people doing those services. So again, you're not getting that expert knowledge, you're not getting the efficiency to be actually driving that margin up. It doesn't work. It's not a business model. That's more of a therapy need, is one of the ways that I put it. Um, and if I was going to kind of, with this truth, if I was going to kind of lean on I don't know, a micro case study, a really good example would be, inside Xero in New Zealand, there was a laser focus on reducing friction for our customers. So it meant that every extra click or decision was then considered a cost, and also an opportunity loss. So the way that we map out in SaaS what that customer journey or those client touch points are, if we could do that in accounting firms, or if more accounting firms could think that way about workflows, it would have an absolutely huge impact, not on just customer satisfaction, it would also increase your efficiency. And you can then really easily apply lean methodology across all of your different workflows. Um, the second truth that I really wanted to kind of share with you guys is subscription relationships reduce stress. Now, I've spoken to, and it took me a while to get my head around this as well, because I always think, well, hang on, if I'm doing a subscription, that means my churn's going to go sky high. I can't bank on that money. Like I'm not locking people into multi-year contracts. It's really hard to work out what my cash flow is looking like. But it's not. When you actually move from time-based to subscription-based relationship, there's probably around three big things that happen. So first of all, your margins get healthier. Subscriptions basically reward consistency, whereas I've seen it in a lot of firms where time-based billing actually rewards chaos. Bookkeeping is a really interesting one to me where people are still charging by the hour. It's like you're being penalized for being efficient at doing your work because you're charging by the hour. Whereas if you ensure that there's not any scope creep and you have a subscription-based revenue coming through, expectations on the client, both from a monetary cash flow point of view, but also then from a service delivery point of view, are all clearly set at the very start of that client relationship. The second thing that I've noticed is that your client relationships actually become a bit calmer. So there's way less surprises. There's no fee disputes that you're dealing with all the time, and there's none of that. And although I've got some really great stories, but there's none of that almost no emotional hostage negotiations that you have with like some of your key clients in your firm. And then the third thing where I've seen people roll out this more kind of SaaS mentality into a firm that I see is people stop tolerating the wrong clients. If you look at SaaS companies, they ruthlessly segment and cleanse customers continuously. They identify verticals where they have the biggest margin, also the biggest TAM, the biggest opportunity. Whereas some of the firms which are really good firms that I've worked with in the UK, one, they actually don't have the oversight and the visibility of being able to segment their clients effectively and accurately. But two, it's almost like they like to cling on to them like Victorian romance novels, if I was going to give a bit of an analogy there. So do remember that with subscriptions, it's not just it doesn't just stabilize your revenue, it actually stabilizes your mental health, and it stabilizes your whole business, and your teams as well, and your clients know exactly what to expect way earlier in that client relationship. Um, and then truth number three, and again, this is always a difficult one to talk to because I'm a people person. So yes, I am very heavily into tech and I've been working in tech firms for a very long time. But for me, I am very much people do business with people with the help of technology. Um, so this truth that your team setup might be holding you back, it's the uncomfortable part that most people avoid saying out loud. Um, a lot of the places I'm going to now, the team structure probably also belongs in 2015 and not 2025. So if I was to break that down a little bit, it's more around most firms are organized around roles rather than outcomes. Whereas if you look at SaaS companies and also the way that I've set it up in Mazuma, is we organize it around customer journeys. So we have your marketing, sales, onboarding, customer success, and then I align that with revenue streams. So I would then look at, okay, net new customer expansion. I look at our churn, but I also look at our expansion revenue in the middle. And we map out that journey. So it's almost an infinity cycle. So the customer's growing with us. They're on the right product. We're continuously trying to monetize services that are relevant to the majority of our customer base. So they never kind of fall out of that infinity cycle. Um, I also see generalists everywhere. And let's be honest, if there's generalists everywhere, it means that there's bottlenecks everywhere. If everyone does everything, it means that no one's accountable for anything. I appreciate that hiring and talent acquisition is really difficult at the moment. I appreciate the long-standing traditions within our profession. And, I've been there myself. I had to go through ACCA, but is it really fit for purpose with what we need now? Again, if we're thinking about what our client expectations are at the forefront of everything, I don't think that we need to be running, the setup that people should be going through X amount of years, almost in the tip, especially in the big four. Um, and I can say this because I don't, we shouldn't be having groups of people that aren't allowed to talk to a client for 3 years or pick up the phone or have a commercial conversation with a client. We also find that quite often I see that your best people in a firm are doing the wrong work. So, and this happens all the time. So, like you've got a senior accountant that's been with you who's absolutely brilliant at their job, but then they're still chasing bank statements. Like, if that's happening, you don't have a people problem, you have a system problem. And SaaS is really good at just focusing on the outcomes of where we want to be and then building that structure around what those outcomes are. And the next thing as well that I see regularly is that most firms need more operators and fewer firefighters. Um, I believe that the future firm is lean, it's specialized, it's designed around flow and client expectations. So I really do think that, one thing that everyone should be consistently looking at is how their operating model is being delivered by their team setup. And then the final truth, I guess truth number four, practical changes that you can make now. So there are a few things that you can change immediately, not in 5 years. Sorry, out not after a rebrand even, not when you feel ready. It's things that you can do straight away. And the number one thing that I always go to that we see the biggest, I guess, it's probably the least effort and the biggest return for firms who are looking to modernize and scale quickly is by productizing and monetizing around 80% of your services. So when I'm saying 80% of services, obviously the gold star would be to do 100% unless you get, outliers or VIP clients or large pieces of work that you want to you want the revenue for, you want to expand into that potentially in the future. But I'm talking about standardizing the core. So, you leave that bespoke work for the premium tiers, which means that you're then also charging a premium price for that work as well. I think another real practical tip, build a proper onboarding engine. A good onboarding process solves around 70% of your operational stress. If you can, again, set those expectations, get all the information that you need, have clients on the right systems, working with the right people at the start of that relationship, it saves so much pain and hassle further down the line. When I say build a proper onboarding engine as well, that's not just for your clients, it's also for new team members. Like set the expectations early, have hiring cohorts if you are at that size of a firm, but make sure that it's a consistent onboarding experience for everyone. I alluded earlier around tracking the metrics that matter. I'm sure most of you on this call are familiar with the book Measure What Matters. It's one of my favorite business books. I'd highly recommend it. If you don't measure something, it doesn't improve, like it doesn't become a focus. So the metrics that do matter, think about your ARR, your annual recurring revenue. ARPU is a really cool one, especially when you're looking at again future financial modeling, plus also being able to accurately forecast where you might be growing over the next 12 months, plus looking at expansion versus net new revenue. ARPU is significant. I've already mentioned churn. Of course, everyone's already measuring their margins, but I would again suggest measuring your margins by revenue stream and outcomes as opposed to what the current workflows are. I would always make sure that you're measuring the client lifetime value and then customer effort scores as well. If you don't track it, you can't improve it. Practical tip number four, you know, I would say redesign your team structure. There's never a good time to do it, but if you're trying to become a modern, scalable firm and you're changing your operating model to future-proof your firm, but you haven't then kept up with the delivery of that operating model through your team, you're going to have huge issues. So the way that I recommend people start this process is to think in lanes. So think around sales, onboarding, delivery, success, expansion, churn. Think in lanes when you are redesigning that team structure. The fifth practical tip, kill the busy work, right? How easy is it for people to say that? But you need to like automate, systemize everything, declutter. I've been to firms who have workflows older than their longest serving client. Like it just makes no sense to me. Again, another thing I always say is process is like mold. It just continues growing and growing and growing. So put some time to focus on outcomes, automate and systemize what you can, get rid of anything that's not either adding value to your business or adding value to your client. And then that will also enable you to be able to understand where you want your best people to be doing their best work within that customer journey. And then the final tip that I just wanted to kind of share with you from a practical tip perspective is decide who you're not serving. So you can't scale if you're saying yes to everyone. This is something that I think we pay a lot of lip service to in our profession. We say we specialize here, or, won't take clients that I would class as a C grade client. Realistically, if I'm going to go across the board, and I'm sorry for anyone who's probably shaking their heads like that's not my firm, realistically, I see issues with a huge margin issues with people who are working with clients that they're not making any money on them. Not only are they not making any money on them from a revenue perspective, they're also having at a loss because they also have the opportunity loss where they could be servicing clients and customers who are going to be profitable for them, but they're also losing out on staff because staff don't want to work with those type of clients with the wrong systems. So just going to skip through this bit a little bit. So just to close off, because I appreciate I've spoken for 20 minutes as opposed to 15. Modern firms aren't modern because of software, despite what, the software companies are telling you, and despite what we get forced down our throats pretty much on a daily basis. Every event we go to, use my software, it will make you, it's the silver bullet. They're not modern because of software. They're modern because of structure, they're modern because of mindset, and they're modern because of clarity. Sorry, I've just got a parcel at the door. If you can take one thing away from today, I would say you can't keep running a 2025 business with a 2015 operating system. You wouldn't do it on your phone. You update your phone and your iPads and your computers with new operating systems. You need to be doing the same for your firm. And if you are ready to modernize, simplify, and get out of that survival mode, I do believe that the firms who act now will be the ones that will be standing strong in 5 years' time, especially with the changes in the industry, especially with the changes in technology. They're going to be the firms that are not the ones that are scrambling to catch up. So on that, I will close off. Please do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want, if you would like to. It's Emma Crawford. But I'm also happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Oh, thank you so much, Emma. That is that I was fascinated by all of that. I was when you were going, oh, I need to hurry up. I was thinking, no, no, take as long as you need
Oh,
because
sorry, I thought I'd seen it. I'd had 15 minutes. I was like, oh gosh, there's quite a lot of
no,
people
no,
seeing
no.
different
By all
things here.
means, it was really, really it quite insightful way of looking at things. In terms of questions, did anyone have any immediate questions for Emma? Because obviously I've written down a few, but I don't want to jump in before anyone else if there's something they'd like to ask. No? So going back to what you said, in terms of niching, is that something you would highly recommend then for firms rather than being general practice to actually really pick a niche and throw your whole self into it? Is that something you'd say?
So I think when you're looking at that, you're looking at it from different angles. So, someone might say, okay, I'm going to be really targeted because I know that the TAM, the total addressable market for this vertical, is something that I can deliver on. There's the opportunity there. I've got a product market fit. I think it goes more than that. Like there is a place for generalization, but a good example would be to look horizontally. So at Mazuma and at Zero, actually, we could say that although we're not focused on verticals, we are focused on a horizontal, which is, clients with less than 10 employees and sole traders. And we are just purely working that market. And again, we know that there's just under 5 million SMBs that fit into that niche that we are after, which is the backbone of the small business economy in the UK. We know that they're underserviced. We know that we can efficiently deliver by the nature of our operating model and our team structure, we can deliver the services that those client needs. So therefore, we can go fully into just that segment of the market and be successful. So I think to your point, I think it's, it doesn't matter which way you look at it. I would warn people against saying, okay, I'm going to work with a certain vertical as opposed to looking at it both vertically, horizontally, and then looking at the future opportunity as well.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? Most people are quite scared to niche in anyway because actually they feel like they're closing doors to opportunities as opposed to being able to, potentially charge more for having a specialism or a niche or something to be able to say, well, we are the expert in that field.
Yeah, and then also it goes like from a geographical perspective as well, right? So that's quite often overlooked. It's,
Mm.
I've worked with firms who specifically want to work with people in, the southeast or specifically want to work with people in certain counties. That again is changing. So what we shouldn't be doing is just like that operating model worked, but now how many times do you actually need to see a client face to face? What's the client's expectations
Yes.
and going into a bricks and mortar office? Versus actually being able to get more value through the use of technology and systemization. So yeah, it's I would look at it as I'd warn against people just saying, okay, well, I want to niche because it makes sense. There's lots of positives. I think just making sure that that focus is on the right, either vertical, horizontal, or even future opportunity to really kind of double down on.
And in terms of obviously, you said about productizing our services. Are you a believer in sort of tiers and packages then? Because obviously that's as you said, if you're looking at a SaaS business like Zero, you buy this package or this package or this package or this package. Is it the same? You do almost like bronze, gold, and things like that.
Yeah, so at Mazuma we do that, and then we also do the add-ons. So just like all of the SaaS bit companies do as well, and the reason for that is because of one, it's a client expectation. You think about most subscriptions that you're buying now, you have different tiers that you can go to.
Yeah.
Secondly, and most important for me when I'm looking at revenue is it's the cross-sell upsell opportunity into your base. So as I mentioned before, like quite often we forget about expansion revenue as a profession.
Yeah.
Which is why we need to be focusing on things like ARPU as well. It's the ability to say, okay, well, not only can I upsell to a higher tier package, but I can do these additional add-ons. But because of it's all productized, it's very
Yeah.
easy for me to just be able to add on, additional payroll or an additional service, a standalone service, or a one-off, even though I've got my main bill with my or my main billing relationship with my customer is recurring because of all of the benefits that come with that and subscription based, but then I can also charge for like a one-off piece of work that then feeds into that productization.
And would you suggest in terms of obviously whilst you've got your packages, they presumably have to be transactional based because like you said, if you're charging by the hour, you're therefore losing out for efficiencies that you gain doing the job. So presumably you're doing transactional based?
Yeah, so I always look at it transactional based to kind of push people up to that next package.
Yeah.
And obviously working out what your costs associated to delivering the service would be, but also then as well specific services. So they're at Mazuma, for example, our bread and butter is doing taking the bookkeeping away
Yeah.
from our clients, but then also the end result is then obviously generating a tax return and filing a tax return as well.
Yeah.
So it might be a case of we've standardized in our packages a number of transactions from the bookkeeping side of things, and then maybe a tax return. But then if you're VAT registered, then we might add on a different one, or you have to go up to the next package. So yeah, I think it's more than just the number of transactions. I think you can be really clever around how you set up those tiers to be able to pull or enable you to be able to enable you to be able to what to pull revenue levers in the future by just adjusting those packages slightly to move people up.
Mm. Do you find that you ever lose the sort of, I don't know, personal relationship with the client when you're putting yourself out there almost as a SaaS? It is almost a cold relationship, as in this is you pick your tier, you pay up for that, it's X amount per month, that's it, as opposed to, I don't know, the more nicey bespoke pricing and things like that. Do you find that you lose any of the personality?
So I'm a big believer in this as well. So 10 years ago I would have said yes.
Yeah.
Now I don't think it's like that at all because clients' expectations are changing. We're seeing, business owners and clients now coming through. A lot more of them are coming through, and that Gen Z who actually prefer the more efficient, factual delivery of services and communications. But again, it has to be relevant to who you're servicing. If you are obviously servicing, a small amount of customers that are high value and their expectations are actually you are basically working with them as a fractional CFO or you're delivering advisory services, then that probably wouldn't be the best way, or one-off paid services. That wouldn't be, you would lose that personality, you'd lose part of your value proposition. But it's for the majority, especially with compliance work in our profession, that can be
Yeah.
automated and you're not losing the personality because then you get to do really cool things, such as having someone who's actually a customer success manager or an account manager that's working with your client in partnership. So
Yeah.
yes, from a business perspective, they're not necessarily the ones doing the grunt work and doing churning out the bookkeeping and the tax returns because we've got an accounting operations team that does that. But they have that relationship, that commercial relationship with the customer where they can, recommend different partnerships that might be of use to them, or they can be the person they become the person that the client almost always wants to talk to because they built that relationship up because of they own them as their customer success manager.
Perfect. Fred, you've got a question.
Yeah, so it's sort of picking up on the personal relationship aspect, because I would say most of my client base are people that I know and get on with and would share a beer with and all that sort of thing. When we sort of boil things down to a process rather than as a function of a relationship, and obviously it does change with people's expectations, do you find there's a danger that people can be a bit more transient because they've got no relationship to keep them hooked, as it were?
Yeah, no, so this is what I was alluding to before. That's why people also get worried about doing a subscription based rather than, payment on completion of work or, an annual bill, is because of they feel like, oh, actually they are more transient. I'm more likely to lose them. I've not actually seen that. So in all the businesses that I've worked with, my churn rate has been below 3%, which is like really, really good.
Hmm.
In your Actually, with you in particular, Fred, because of you already know these people, you've already got that relationship regardless of the service that you're providing. Do you know what I mean? So actually, I would say where people you already have the relationship, you know them, you're going to be having that outside of work anyway. And I actually find that they're a lot less transient because of they're getting the efficiencies and they're getting the correct information in a timely manner, and it's easy for them to access, and they feel like they have control because they feel that they can self-serve slightly as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I suppose if it
empowers
comes from the
them.
perspective of an existing relationship that you put the SaaS underneath, as it were. But in terms of attracting new clients, we could probably all attract new clients if you say, right, there you go, 50 quid a month and whatnot. But it'd be those ones that you might spend the time and effort investing in, then find that they get a better offer down the road, or that they do meet someone who they actually connect with personally. It'd be those growth clients, for want of a better expression, that I might be more worried about. That'd be the transient ones, not the existing core base.
Right, okay. Yeah, so with those ones as well, because you're basically looking at how your team's structured by the outcomes as well, they do get that relationship because of their growing with their customer success manager.
Right.
So the ones that we normally get, very rare, like I've probably seen it once where, because obviously we do a massive churn analysis every month. I've seen it once where it's been like a reason that they've left is because of they found a relationship, or like they've got a better relationship with another customer. What we do get, and you've called out there, is pricing. Like the last thing that you want to be is in a race to the bottom.
Mm.
But again, that's where I've seen it because we utilize in Mazuma, for example, we have our own proprietary software. We utilize that. So they also get that as part of their packages. So that's where you get really clever with productizing your packages because actually all of the packages are different. And competitor A down the road might say, well, we might do it for 40 quid a month. But then actually they're not covering the parts of the package that we would cover that they've been happy with and they've never had problems with. A really good example of that is payroll. So, even if they were paying less, they know how important payroll is to the happiness of
Mm.
their staff and the running of the business. We've always done a good job. They've never felt like they haven't had a relationship or had anyone to be able to approach or any issues. They're not just going to leave because of it's a race to the bottom or they've got a better relationship.
Mm, yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Thanks.
That's really interesting. Do you think in terms of like for example, you said obviously you've got your own software, which is obviously a massive thing for you to be able to promote. For the smaller firms like ours, which don't have something like that to be able to put forward, how do you keep on top of making sure clients are aware of the add-on products, for example, that you can do and making sure that they're fully informed as to what you offer? Because in a lot of places they're on board, you might work out the pricing for them, but then until if they don't realise, I don't know, like in Fred's case, for example, you do inheritance tax planning because they didn't need that when they joined the practice 2 years ago. How do you make sure that you keep them up to date with everything you've got going on?
So that's probably the benefit as well of this model is because you basically all of our clients get a 3 monthly check-in with one of our customer success managers. So
Right.
they're always talking that they're asking the right questions because they're not busy having to be doing the actual accounting work. Like
Yeah.
their job is to be more commercially focused and ask, okay, so tell me how business is going. Have you heard about this new bit of information here? Did you know that we've just rolled this out? And so they're actually getting like we're staying on top of both the health of our clients' businesses, but also they're understanding what we're doing. And because
Yeah.
of we doing a lot more electronic comms as well. So obviously I have my marketing team, they do customer communications as well as prospect communications. So we do things like, we do like newsletters, we do a lot of press releases and things like that. And then we have the teams calling people down if we think it's going to be beneficial to that client.
So basically, it's more about having, if you have a customer success team working with you, making sure you carve out some time in your diary to be able to almost hold that role yourself until
Yeah,
you're
and
big enough
the
to
way that,
more.
yeah, definitely. And the way that I see it very much, and I'm going back to my time in practice, and I'm thinking now, 17 years ago, it was very modern to have client managers
Yeah.
within a firm, as opposed to going down the traditional senior accountant, assistant accountant, etc. This is almost like that next stage to that. So whereas the client managers back 17, 15, 17 years ago, they were the people, they'd be fronting that relationship with the client. They'd also then be reviewing the work, they'd be reviewing the accounts, they'd be doing a lot of the actual physical delivery of the service as well. This is taking it one more stage where it's like, no, actually, I'm a partnership with you, and I'm just going to be discussing the commercial opportunities for your business, but
Yeah.
also then driving the benefits in uplift for our business as well.
And do you think that quarterly is about the right length of time between these check-ins? I mean, presumably you've obviously had to test this theory and gone, well, if monthly's maybe too much and half yearly's too little, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So again, it would depend in what your niche is, or like, what the majority of your customer base are, like the size of them, what they do, what their expectations are. So we do a lot of like EMPS surveys as well. We do a lot of kind of feedback that's automated throughout the year, and that's separate to the customer success check-ins, let's call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we find quarterly, because the way that we split our customer base out as well, it gives each CSM enough time to get through their full base and the customers that they look after by doing it quarterly.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, right, because we send out newsletters, because we do a lot of press releases, we have new partnerships and we'll send out press releases on that via EDMs. They are constantly kind of getting trickles of information, but for me, the face to face, or it's not even face to face, right? It's normally over a Zoom call or a phone call check-in quarterly is ideal for our customer base.
And obviously you've got your own marketing department, so presumably you create everything from scratch. How do you think that in terms of like for the smaller practice, is it a good idea? Because a lot of places say we will prepare these publications for you to be able to brand yourself and send out. Do you think that's a wise choice, or do you think it should always be more written by yourself in your own tone?
No, I think you do what you need to do. Like I think if you can outsource something and you're getting the right outcome from it, outsource it. That said, again, utilize the technology and the systems that are available for you now. Like you can quite easily go and create a marketing document on ChatGPT, which is most marketing agencies are doing. And what would have taken maybe half a day can take now 2, 3 minutes. For me, it's not necessarily the content. Like I would always want to have oversight and sign off on all the content because it has to be, aligned to our brand. It has to be hitting the right markers and information. It has to have the right call to actions. But I've seen things that have been delivered by my marketing team that I'm just like, that took you half a day? Are you joking? Like you use the tools that are available for you. But if you need to outsource certainly. You obviously can't do everything.
No, again, when you are a sole practitioner, it is that much more, isn't it, to try and have the time for the client calls and the marketing and the work, and it's just
Oh,
a lot.
and then running your own business and doing your own finances as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Mazumba really going forward with the whole AI move? Can I ask, without giving too much away?
Yes, yes, yes. So we are working on so we took in an investment a couple of years ago. That's when they moved me as well into the team. We built out our exec and our board a little bit more. We are currently using AI for numerous parts of our customer journey. One of the biggest changes that we have launched recently is the basically turning off inbound telephone. So we now have a ticketing system.
Yeah.
Not only does it allow us to be more efficient and get the questions or queries and technical queries to our customers a lot faster, it also gives me a hell of a lot of data to understand through product development, but also through commercial opportunity. It means that I can just run a search on a specific term. It might be coming up to January, personal tax returns,
Yeah.
and look and see, over 4,500 clients, what are the key problems, and then I can commercialize those key problems as well. So yeah, we're utilizing AI already.
Yeah.
I think we're going to go a lot further with it, but also I'm very much of the belief that there will be a burst of the bubble at some point.
Yeah.
So maintaining, like, we don't want to go too far ahead, and as I said before, people to me do business with people.
Yes.
It's just utilizing it in the right way where it's not like people are talking to robots all the time, unless they want to talk to a robot.
Oh dear. Al just said AI has no soul. Well, they all believe that Al is AI because of his name.
Well,
So
as we all know, Al is greater than AI. Human
Ju-
intelligence over artificial every day.
Just on that ticketing thing, I know a local firm that was taken over by a bigger firm. The bigger firm is obviously backed by venture capitalists and they're trying to grow that way. I know some of the clients of that firm, and to say they are peed off with being put in a ticketing system, not being able to phone up and speak to someone, and we all see it ourselves when we phone up government departments. I
Mm.
could probably say if I ever go down the ticketing system route, I've failed because it's not a personal service. I'd probably sack someone on the spot for forcing me in a ticketing service.
So again, it depends, right? It depends on like what your ambitions are, if you're scaling, what size your customers are, what the
It's the
expectations.
customer's ambitions. We all know that sitting in, a queue, being told we're important to someone, and you'll be seen in 25 minutes is just not being important to someone.
But that's what we had is actually the feedback, and we had this at Zero as well, because obviously there's no internal phone, like there's no inbound phone call at Zero, is people were finding it more frustrating not being able to get through because of if you've got 4,000 clients and a certain amount of people who are working, they want to talk to the accountants. We couldn't balance the need for our accountants to be delivering the accounting work, and people were getting more frustrated with having to be on hold and or not getting through or not getting a call back fast enough. So it there's pros and cons to both. We've done it over a period of 3 to 4 months. It's been very, very controlled. We've seen 2 or 3 clients out of 4,000 that have left because of the ticketing system.
Mm,
Those clients were people that we had issues with anyway, with getting timely responses from, and issues with waiting for work that we needed, that had then been late. So the majority, and again, it's trying to standardize the 80% right, and then make the rest of it bespoke.
mm,
Also, then what I've done is we do have an upsell opportunity where people really do want it, and then I just charge that as extra. So you can have a premium upsell, so you can actually have a dedicated accountant inbound line.
mm.
Emma,
Oh,
have you
thank
found,
you.
sorry, have you found that with this kind of almost no touch with your clients, that you possibly have lost a sector of business, perhaps in the older sort of age group, kind of 50 plus, where they actually want to talk to people, where, yeah, the millennials and the Gen Z perhaps don't want to talk to anyone, so that would be your bigger market?
Yeah, so I think I think that's fair. Like we haven't seen specifically when I look at our churn figures, it hasn't been specifically, a certain age group of people, or it hasn't been a certain length of time with us as a business, as our customer that has gone. If I was anecdotally looking at it, I would expect that outcome, to be honest. But again, it's because it's not aligned to our operating model. So I can't have the scaling that we're doing, and also looking at our ARPUs, remember, because we're doing service in the bottom half of the clients, we're
Mm.
not charging them enough. Well, we're charging them enough for what we're doing, but we can't then sink cost into, I guess, time cost into being able to have those conversations. So that's where I'd say, like, that's why we're so focused on this is the type of client that we service. This is what they would look like to be successful working with us. This is what their business would look like to be successful working with us. And then go from there. But you're completely right, Fiona. Like there'll be people that are just not in that we won't go after because of if that's what they need, it's not the service that we can provide.
Yeah, I think with the certainly my size of business and the type of clients that I deal with, they want to be able to contact you and discuss something with you. And I think in that case, I wouldn't work well with the Gen Zs, because I also appreciate that contact with the clients and understanding their businesses, and I almost become a part of their business.
That's exactly it as well. Like that is completely. I mean, I went into accountancy because I like people and I like their business, and I like the face-to-face piece. I
Mm.
loved having our like yearly meetings, and that was what really drove me to continue being in that profession. And but client expectations are changing. So I mean, if you can get the number of clients and service them through that operating model, and you've got that,
Mm.
the growth that you want to have, that's fine. I think as we're looking at, future proofing, and obviously going to have less of those type of clients because expectations are changing. That's where it's really difficult. One thing I would caveat that with though, and I've seen this again across multiple continents and multiple industries, is we quite often make a presumption that the client needs that when they actually don't. So this is why I always do, like, even with the ticketing system and stuff, when we reached out, I do a voice of the client exercise first, where I'll go and I'll speak to clients, where I'll go and send out surveys and get feedback from my client base around what they value first before we make any changes. Because I have seen that so many times where people have been like, no, my clients definitely would need that. And then I've spoken to the client as well as I've done consulting with them, and the client's like, no, that's not important to me. I like it, it's nice, but it's not whether or not that's not the reason why I'm their customer. So I think it's really important to do voice of the client exercises.
Confessions of an Accountant, where no topic is off the ledger.